Hello everyone. Today I am going to be discussing Disney again versus the original source material of Mulan. Now the interesting thing about the particular original work for Mulan is that it's actually a poem, a relatively short poem at that, and sort of follows in on sort of the legend surrounding this particular character, Mulan. So it's going to be relatively shorter than the previous video that I made. And the reason why I'm wearing a crown is because every time there's a Disney princess film, I'll be wearing a crown to sort of symbolize that where we are and what we're talking about. So you'll just see me doing that on and off. But without any further ado, Mulan. So basically, the original source material that I have right here is basically the poem, and it's relatively short, so I figured for this particular review I would just read sort of the poem and go through you the similarities and differences of what the poem is sort of trying to say and what I think the Disney work was trying to say. So without further ado, here are the first couple of lines. Tisk, tisk, and again tisk, tisk. Mulan weaves, facing the door. You don't hear the shutters sound. You only hear daughter's sighs. They ask daughter who's in her heart. They ask daughter who's on her mind. No one is on daughter's heart. No one is on daughter's mind. Now I think this opening to the poem is sort of maybe similar to like the sort of reflection aspect that Disney was trying to go for, and that she has a trouble of finding her identity. She doesn't really know who she is. It's sort of more established though in the Disney work that they do try to show her trying to go off to be like any other typical woman and go through the different traditional stages within Chinese culture. But you see how this really ends up impacting her in a negative way, and she starts questioning herself. And so I think the poem was sort of going in for that similar aspect, except they don't explain that in the poem. But at the same time, I think a lot of people deal with these this question of identity and what we are, and so I think Disney was really trying to pull out the idea that was coming from this poem in that respect. And there's often a lot of reference to heart, follow your heart and yada yada yada. So it's again, I think, really trying to use those poems, this poem's ideas, and try to incorporate them into the film. But it continues going. Last night I saw the draft posters. The Khan is calling many troops. The army list is in 12 scrolls. On every scroll there's father's name. Father has no grown-up son. Mulan has no elder brother. So basically, the way that it's revealed to us in the poem is rather different than how it's displayed in the Disney work. In the Disney work, there are scrolls, but they're handed out to like every individual. Like you'll see this in the way beginning when the guy comes that's part of the emperor's army, and he says, hey, every guy needs to come and serve, and he hands them out every single one a scroll, so that when they show it to the camp that they're sent off to, that, oh, okay, we can let this person fight. So, and as a way of keeping records. But it seems like the scrolls that they're talking about in the original work are just sort of a list of people, and again it sort of mentions sort of the gender roles, and that, oh, she doesn't have an elder brother that can take her father's place. She doesn't even have a brother at all, so she can't, so there is nobody else that can go besides her father, who's a male. So again, it kind of brings back that idea that that sort of these traditional roles were given to Chinese people during this time period of when the poem was written, which is relatively old. But basically, um, that's kind of how the original work plays out. It just says a list and says, yep, the father's on it. It's gotta go. But it doesn't really offer sort of an explanation as to, oh, the father, isn't capable of fighting. There's no mention in the original poem that, oh, he's hurt or injured or he's old. It kind of doesn't really mention that. It just says, yeah, the father is put on the list, so he has to go. So in a way, I think Disney tried to add in a little bit more drama by making him rather weak and old. At one point you'll see he's always holding that cane. So again, it's sort of different in that respects, in that there's a little bit more to offer in the Disney work as far as explanation goes. But the poem continues going, I want to buy a saddle and horse and serve in the army in father's place. In the East Market, she buys a spirited horse. In the West Market, she buys a saddle. In the South Market, she buys a bridle. In the North Market, she buys a long whip. This is actually kind of rather amusing because in the Disney work, she kind of already has everything at her disposal. Her father's gear, the horse, a saddle, or I think she really has everything. So really, she just takes all that stuff and just runs. But in this one, it's actually saying, no, she has to actually go out and buy the stuff. So I found that to be rather interesting. I guess it's maybe showing too that maybe these were sort of items that normally people wouldn't have, but you would have to go buy probably if there was a war going on. So again, it's probably more historically accurate, obviously, since it's probably showing what ancient China was more like, even though the Disney version has a talking dragon in it. So yeah, there's definitely a lot more realism in this poem. So basically it continues with, at dawn she takes leave of father and mother, in the evening camps on the Yellow River's bank. She doesn't hear the sound of father and mother calling, she only hears the Yellow River flowing water cry, Tisane, Tisane. At dawn she takes leave of the Yellow River, in the evening she arrives at the Black Mountain. She doesn't hear the sound of father and mother calling, she only hears Mount Yen's nomad horses cry, Tisu, Tisu. She goes 10,000 miles on the business of war. She crosses passes and mountains like flying. So there really, I think, is an emphasis in the original work that Mulan was gone for a very long time. In the Disney work, they painted it as so like, oh yeah, there's only 2 battles. There's really only 2 fights to be had. There really isn't a emphasis on distance. Like, it seems like the poem is trying to display that she misses her family, like she wants to be with her family. But in the Disney work, you don't get that at all. You don't get a sense that she's really missing them or really wants to go back home. You really don't get that sense at all, and I think that kind of brings the Disney version down a little bit for me, in that she just sort of kind of, just leaves her life and doesn't really think about her family so much anymore, which I find rather odd. And at this point in time within the poem, it's really trying to emphasize the distance that's been created. And in the Disney work, you don't really feel that distance at all, because everything just goes by so quickly, and it's sort of emphasized to them Mulan has these companions, the 3 stooges of this movie, like Shin Po and Ling and Yao, and then you have Mushu, and then you have the cricket who doesn't say anything. So again, Disney tries to make it very lighthearted in that sense, but it seems a little bit more traumatic in the original work, where Mulan is having to deal with being so far away and has to be from one place to the next, and then fight these constant battles. And so it's really trying to paint the picture that she really was in a war. Like, it wasn't like she was in one battle. So I think in a way, it's really trying to display that whole idea of how war really can change people, and war really takes up a lot of time. So, again, a little bit more realistic, I think, than the Disney version. But the poem continues going, northern gusts carry the rattle of army pots. Chilly light shines on iron armor. Generals die in 100 battles. Stout soldiers return after 10 years. So basically, it is emphasizing that after 10 years, she's back now. Like this is the time when soldiers come back after 10 years. So really, she's been gone for a long, long time. And in the Disney work, you feel like she was just there and then back. So really, it kind of makes everything rather quick. Really, you don't get that sense again of time, of her having to deal with the fact that it's been so long. So again, completely different take. But it continues with, on her return, she sees the Son of Heaven. The Son of Heaven sits in the splendid hall. He gives out promotions in 12 ranks and prizes of 100,000 and more. The Khan asks her what she desires. Mulan has no use for a minister's post. I wish to ride a swift mount to take me back to my home. So now you kind of see a similarity within the Disney work. I think the Son of Heaven is referring to the emperor, because if you look at ancient Chinese culture, sort of heaven was sort of like a godly realm, similar to Middle Ages culture, and the emperor is sort of the voice of the people, and is sort of the messenger, kind of similar to the Pope almost, I would say. So I think the Son of Heaven is referring to like the emperor or somebody of really high authority, similar to the Disney work. And the thing is, in the Disney work, he actually does give her gifts. He does give her like this medallion thing, and then he gives her like a sword, like hey, this is some stuff to show you what you've done for China. But I think the original work tries to paint Mulan as more of a humble figure, in that she is part of the war, but she's not the center of attention. She's not the highly praised soldier. She's just an average soldier. It's not like she went out and saved China, but she did contribute to what was going on. And at the same time, the emperor in turn gives people gifts for, I guess, their service. And the funny thing is just she denies any gift at all, whereas the Disney work, she's like, okay, I'll take a medallion, I'll take whatever the emperor wants to give me. But in this version, she's like, I don't want anything, I just want to go home. And I wouldn't blame her after being so long away from your family for 10 years. So again, there is this whole emphasis too on just her being so far away and so distant, and wanting to return to a sense of normalcy within her life. And it's kind of similar to in the Disney work, where she denies a post or a position, sort of similar how it's addressed in the original work, except she says, I've been away from home long enough, it would be nice, but no thank you. So again, there is that similar aspect that Disney was trying to pull from. So the poem continues with, when father and mother hear daughter is coming, they go outside the wall to meet her, leaning on each other. When elder sister hears younger sister is coming, she fixes her robe facing the door. When little brother hears elder sister is coming, he whets the knife quick for pig and sheep. I guess it is emphasized, I guess, that Mulan has siblings. The original work does not. Excuse the telephone. in the Disney work, there are clearly she has no siblings whatsoever. But in the original work, is trying to paint that, yeah, she has a sister, an elder sister, and then, yeah, she has a younger brother. But I don't know if this younger brother suddenly showed up within those 10 years. But I guess maybe it was the child was too young probably at the time to go out and fight, so I guess it would make sense that I guess she could technically have a younger brother. So it kind of shows that she does have sort of a more extended family than what the Disney version gives her, which is just, yeah, her parents. Both of her parents, actually, instead of some other ones where both parents aren't alive. But basically, after she returns home in the original work, she basically she says, I open the door to my east chamber, I sit on my couch in the restroom, I take off my wartime gown and put on my old-time clothes. Facing the window, she fixes her cloud-like hair. Hanging up a mirror, she dabs on yellow flower powder. She goes out the door and sees her comrades. Her comrades are all amazed and perplexed. Traveling together for 12 years, they didn't know Mulan was a girl. The here hare's feet go hop and skip. The she hare's eyes are muddled and fuddled. Two hares running side by side close to the ground. How can they tell if I am he or she? So basically the funny thing about this aspect of the original work is that these comrades, they sort of are just like, oh, taken aback, like, oh, you're a girl. Huh, we didn't know that for 12 years. Ha, how funny. But in the Disney work, it really treats it as like a crime. Like it's bad. Like if you if you're a woman and you go off to fight, you should die. Which I kind of don't understand at all, because you're getting more people. Like you're getting more people to go out and fight for your war. Why would you really care whether or not it's a girl or if it's a boy? Like. So I really kind of thought it was interesting how Disney sort of upped the antics and said, no, it's a crime. And even in the beginning, they make it out as a crime. Once Mulan leaves and her parents figure out, oh, she's gone, they sort of realize, oh, we can't even do anything because, if they find out she's a girl, she's a goner. So they really treat it as like this horrible thing, which I find rather odd, because in the original work it just kind of says like, I didn't know she was a girl. She just and it's funny because all she had to do was just change her outfit, like the original work says, put on her makeup, put on her nice dresses, and then all of a sudden, hey, I'm a girl again. So I think it's almost addressing the gender roles, but addressing gender roles, but sort of in a really different way, in that it's saying they wouldn't, sort of when she's talking about the hares, like sort of like rabbits, when she's talking about these various traits that I guess exist between male and female. She says, they're just there side by side. What sort of difference does it make if they know that I'm female or male? Like, why does my gender matter? Sort of, it's addressing that role of these gender issues. Like, how can they know? It wouldn't make a difference either way, because I went out and did my service, and I come back and I show who I really am. So again, it's sort of a tale that is sort of questioning these kinds of gender roles that are within society, and the Disney work was really trying to play this up. They knew that this was the only tale that they were probably going to get that was going to address this issue, so they really wanted to ham it up, and you'll see this in the songs, you'll see this in the dialogue, but again, in the original work, like, no dragon, no side characters, no Shang either. It only just mentions her comrades, and that's it. And they don't seem to, it doesn't seem like that they were just like, huh, you were a girl all this time. Well, okay. But they really treat this in the Disney work like it's a crime, and that it's punishable by death, and it's the most horrible thing you could do. and the thing is that the original work sort of plays it up to the idea of it being a little bit more milder by saying, hey, I was a girl all this time, but that's okay, because either way you wouldn't have been able to tell the difference. So it has really a sort of an odder way of putting the gender roles, and I think the Disney work has some odd ways of putting in the gender roles. Like, I remember the Nostalgia Critic mentioning once, like, when Mulan's going past that field and then she sees all these women and she kind of, like, ducks down in embarrassment. Like, yeah, it's just so... Sometimes I think both works have a little, a very, just a weird way of approaching these kinds of issues. But at the same time, they still approach certain aspects, I think, well. And yeah, they're fairly similar for the most part, even though Disney just added completely, or just completely a whole entire story to it, and really adding in this point, like, it's bad if she goes off and she fights. So, really, the original work, although it doesn't have a whole lot to say, it still says enough through these lines and through the way they're trying to represent sort of the way we see, I guess, gender or these kinds of issues. So I think it in both versions it does a good job of kind of teaching us these various things. But overall, I think that's really all I can say about it. It's fairly simple and sort of to the point. I kind of like how this particular work wasn't all that long and that it's only 2 pages. And Disney just took whatever they could from that poem and just decided to make a movie. So really, it all comes really from this poem, I think. They might have used some other bits of Chinese, maybe history, but I think for the most part they were trying to go for a story that was based upon this kind of poem. So yeah, I think that's really all I can say about it. Any questions, comments, concerns? I'd be more than happy to answer them, but until next time,